Immigration raids ramp up, targeting workers on the job.
They are people that had been in the United States a long time. They had a job, they had homes and properties.
The backlash in the streets, but also from businesses, why the concerns may even be reaching President Trump. The president orders name changes for several military posts, including one currently honoring a Texas general.
He dedicated his life to the Army, and to be disrespected like this goes beyond anything I can think of.
We look at the name change to honor a military hero at the expense of another who served.
God bless Texas for getting behind this and for making it a reality in the Lone Star State.
A former governor helps lead the push to expand tests of a psychedelic drug. Military veterans move Texas toward clinical trials of Ibogaine, why some believe that could save lives.
Produced from the Capitol in Austin and airing statewide, this is the award-winning State of Texas.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm Josh Hinkle. Immigration raids reached a higher intensity in recent days. Enforcement operations targeting work sites have led to arrests and deportations of people who have been working in the U.S. for years. And the action sparked protest in cities around the country, including here in Texas. Protests earlier in the week in Austin and Dallas brought brief clashes between law enforcement and protesters. That led Governor Greg Abbott to deploy National Guard troops to several parts of the state to help manage protests. To be clear, we recorded this program before Saturday's nationwide No Kings protests. You can find full coverage of those events on this station's newscasts and website. The backlash to the crackdown on immigrant workers does go deeper than protests in the streets. Businesses and farmers have also pushed back, and some of their concerns appear to have reached President Donald Trump. He spoke about it at a news conference on Thursday.
Our farmers are being hurt badly by, they have very good workers. They've worked for them for 20 years. They're not citizens, but they've turned out to be, great. And we're going to have to do something about that. We can't take farmers and take all their people and send them back because they don't have maybe what they're supposed to have, maybe not. And you know what's going to happen and what is happening? They get rid of some of the people because, you go into a farm and you look and they've been there for 20, 25 years and they've worked great and the owner of the farm loves them and everything else. And then you're supposed to throw them out. And you know what happens? They end up hiring the people, the criminals that have come in, the murderers from prisons and everything else. So we're going to have an order on that pretty soon, I think. We can't do that to our farmers and leisure too, hotels. We're going to have to use a lot of common sense on that.
Our Border Report team is giving us insight into how some workers are being affected by the immigration crackdown. Fernando Rustrian Herrera worked construction in Houston for nearly 2 years. The 18-year-old was detained by ICE agents at a checkpoint while heading to a construction site. He's one of thousands of migrants deported since President Trump took office in January. Juarez officials say about 3,000 Mexican nationals have been deported through their city alone. But migrants like Rustrian face even tougher choices. Many are stuck in limbo, unable to return to the U.S. and unwilling to go back to their home countries.
I had my apartment in Houston and saw raids taking place. Some had papers and others did not. They would take them, and those with papers would take them up to court. They tricked them.
Rustrian is now staying at a migrant shelter in Juarez. He says he plans to work in Mexico while waiting for conditions in the U.S. to improve. Enrique Serrano with the Chihuahua Population Council helps run Juarez's Migrant Assistance Center. And he says deportees arrive devastated after losing everything they built in America.
They generally arrive in great sadness. They are people that had been in the United States a long time. They had a job, they had homes and properties. Some even opened up a business in the United States, and they were doing good. They are sad because it's going to be very difficult for them to return to the United States soon. They practically have to start here from zero.
Despite being deported, Rustrian says he harbors no ill feelings toward the Trump administration, but he believes the deportations hurt both migrant workers and the people who want them out.
As he harms us, he also harms himself, because all of the things being built in the United States are being built not by Americans, but by migrants.
About 1,500 migrants remain in government and church-run shelters in Juarez. The Trump administration has suspended asylum except in extreme hardship cases. Meanwhile, federal officials are expanding efforts to crack down on illegal border crossings. Last week, U.S. troops started detaining migrants as part of the Deep South campaign. The plan includes zones known as National Defense Areas, or NDAs. Those are military domains established next to border wall areas. People who entered those areas face similar penalties as if they had unlawfully entered a military base. For someone trying to come into the country illegally, that could lead to immediate removal. Officials say the tougher penalties are working.
The crossings and the encounters by Border Patrol over the last several years were several thousand a day. That's dropped to 60 to 70 per day. That's an amazing decline in encounters. So it shows what we're doing here is working.
The campaign is expected to expand with more NDA zones along the border. Federal prosecutors say they are also targeting criminal networks behind the crossings, including cartels and smugglers who profit from misleading migrants. A Texas law that allowed students not legally in the country to qualify for in-state tuition at public universities has been reversed. We look closer at the impact and the unanswered questions. A former governor helps lead the push to expand tests of a psychedelic drug.
I'm completely convinced that this compound has the ability, with one treatment in most cases, to alleviate an addiction.
We speak with Rick Perry about his work to increase access to Ibogaine, why he says that will help Texas veterans. President Trump orders name changes to several military posts, including one that currently honors a Texas general. Now that veteran's family is pushing back. Earlier this month, a federal court banned Texas from continuing the Texas DREAM Act. The 2001 law allowed some students not legally in the country to qualify for in-state tuition at public universities and colleges. Many of those affected came to the country as children or teens. A judge ruled that the law was unconstitutional, and Attorney General Ken Paxton announced his office would not contest the decision. As Adam Schwager tells us, the outcome leaves many questions unanswered.
The only thing we want in this country is literally an opportunity for an education.
Adilsa Lopez fled extreme poverty in Guatemala at age 12, eventually going to school in the Houston area. Despite not speaking English on her arrival, the DACA recipient finished top 10% of her class and attended UT Austin with in-state tuition thanks to the Texas DREAM Act.
It was literally the only reason or the only way I was able to graduate from college.
Last Wednesday, the federal government sued Texas, saying its law ran afoul of federal law, and the Texas Attorney General's office agreed. In a statement, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton said the Texas DREAM Act, quote, unconstitutionally and unlawfully gave benefits to illegal aliens that were not available to American citizens, calling the decision a major victory for Texas. However, State Senator Carol Alvarado says this is a step backwards.
This is going to have we're going to take a financial hit from this because these are students that may choose not to go to school.
With fall tuition bills in the mail next month, schools will have to think quickly. And in the meantime, a host of Texas House Democrats signed on to this, urging the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board to help ensure undocumented Texans can continue receiving in-state rates.
And I hope that people can see that human side as this is the kid that your son or daughter plays with. This is the one they grew up with. This is not some random person that just came running across the border.
For State of Texas, I'm Adam Schwager.
We reached out to Attorney General Paxton's office for comment on the decision not to defend the DREAM Act. We have not received a response. Students eligible for in-state tuition pay significantly less than those who do not qualify. Currently, the average in-state tuition at Texas public universities is just under $11,000. For comparison, the average tuition for out-of-state students is almost 4 times higher, costing over $42,000 annually. Texas lawmakers opened the door to testing psychedelic drugs.
I will spend the rest of my life pushing this, because I've seen the impact it can have.
How military veterans are pushing Texas toward clinical trials that could save lives. And a name change at a Texas military post. We look at the name change to honor a military hero at the expense of another who served. Texas lawmakers loosening restrictions on psychedelic drugs may seem unexpected, but the state wants to be a leader when it comes to research on one drug in particular, Ibogaine. Reporter Sam Stark looks closer at how military veterans are pushing Texas toward that goal.
When they heard even just my story, I share mine, they knew it was real.
While serving in the Army, Chase Rowan suffered a traumatic brain injury.
I was put on opioids. Percocet. I spent the next 17 years addicted to opioids.
He said after just one treatment session with the naturally occurring psychoactive substance Ibogaine, he felt a clarity like never before.
I've been sober this past March. I celebrated 2 years sobriety. I will spend the rest of my life pushing this because I've seen the impact it can have.
Stories like Rowan's got the attention of the Texas legislature. Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed legislation that will set in motion an Ibogaine clinical trial, so it might be more accessible to veterans and others in the future.
Texas will invest $50 million to support this research. Now, these funds can be matched by grants and private investments. I'm proud to sign it into law.
The state said this research on Ibogaine is needed before it can be FDA approved. Studies have already indicated the substance can help treat opioid use disorder, depression, anxiety, and traumatic brain injuries.
Texas has positioned itself as the global leader of Ibogaine research and development, which is critical.
Brian Hubbard leads the American Ibogaine Initiative. After he learned about the treatment's potential, he committed himself to getting lawmakers on board.
I came to commit myself to doing whatever was necessary to advance a therapeutic that can restore the mind, body, and spirit of an individual who has been walled off in the isolation of addiction.
Sam Stark, State of Texas.
There are concerns about Ibogaine. A study by the National Institutes of Health cited the risk of deadly cardiac complications. Others worry the clinical tests could encourage recreational drug use. Senator Tan Parker authored the bill and addressed those concerns.
This will be administered in hospital-type facilities where you have proper cardiac capabilities, you have all the various things that need to be done when treating a patient with Ibogaine that we know of already today. So anything but recreational. This is very serious, very substantive.
Texas is not alone in this effort. President Biden signed federal legislation last December to allow the Defense Department to fund psychedelic research to help military members. One high-profile advocate for Ibogaine research is former Texas Governor Rick Perry. He joins us now. Welcome.
Good to be with you, Josh. Thank you.
How did you, as a former governor, get involved in the push for Ibogaine?
Well, I'll try to be as brief as I can. It goes back to 2006 when, just by the grace of God, we had a meeting on Coronado Island to tour the Special Warfare Center, Naval Special Warfare Center, and a young man helped lead that tour, Texas boy. And matter of fact, there were two Texas boys, one from Perryton and one from back over around Willis. And long story short, one of those was Marcus Luttrell. But that started my wife and I on this long journey towards learning about not only PTSD, but also traumatic brain injury, and actually how poor our government was at dealing with these young men and women who come back home impacted in a very serious way from their conflicts during this war on terror. One of those led to hearing that young men were going down to Mexico to be treated with Ibogaine and this plant medicine. I was very skeptical at first, but I was open-minded. I listened, I studied, and I came to believe that it is or could be, a major widespread solution for a lot of issues that we face in this country, not only the PTSD and what we put our warfighters through for the last 20 years, but for addictions, for some of the neurodegenerative diseases, Parkinson's, MS, potentially Alzheimer's and dementia. So we brought this to the legislature, and I got to say my hat is off to the governor, the lieutenant governor, the speaker, the members of the House that were open-minded, compassionate-hearted, and Texas is now going to be leading the nation, and I will suggest to you leading the world in this study, these clinical trials that will be done on a compound that I'm convinced could be the answer that has been very, very difficult for us to find a solution to when it comes to mental health, depression, anxiety, all of these addictions that we have.
The law to expand Ibogaine testing has passed, as you mentioned, but your work is just beginning. Tell us about your new initiative. What do you hope to achieve now?
Yeah, Brian Hubbard, who is just the absolute genius on this, he has the experience, the knowledge, the understanding of how to run these clinical trials. And from my perspective, that's the real key here. And we're also going to be taking this across the nation now. We've created a 501c3, a nonprofit called Americans for Ibogaine, that I'm the chairman of. Brian Hubbard is the CEO. We've got Marcus Luttrell and his wife are board members as well. There are a lot of other states that are going to be interested in this, and that's going to give us the ability to really expand the clinical trials across the country. Data is king in this kind of a business for the FDA to be able to approve something. So having other states help, having the federal government hopefully reschedule this compound from Schedule 1 down to Schedule 3, where it's a lot easier for these states and these appropriate entities to do the clinical trials, to do the treatments, and to hopefully bring this to the general population. Because whether it's alcohol or opioids or whatever the substance abuse may be, there's a great need for this. And I'm completely convinced that this compound has the ability, with one treatment in most cases, to alleviate an addiction. And that sounds too good to be true, but we've seen it now in thousands of cases. And God bless Texas for getting behind this and for making it a reality in the Lone Star State.
Earlier in the program, we covered the court decision to end the Texas DREAM Act, which takes away in-state tuition for undocumented students. You had championed that act in the past. What are your thoughts on the judgment to get rid of it?
Yeah, 20 years ago, in 2001, well, almost 25 years ago, when that was passed, overwhelmingly, I think it was 7 votes against it in the House, and it passed unanimously in the Senate, as my memory recalls. It was a different time, and I think what has happened over those 20 plus years, particularly in the last 4 years, is this unruly way that the Biden administration dealt with the issue of border security, or in this case, they didn't. They basically had an open border policy, and that has tainted everything all across this country. And I think it made it easy for people to stand up and say, look, what was a thoughtful approach to how we deal with people who don't have the legal right to be in this country 25 years ago to today is completely different. And I think, we're going to have to deal with this issue of immigration before any of these programs can come back into place. The issue has always been a immigration system that was broken, and whether it was Obama or even the American people basically said, you know what, until we get that fixed, these other programs are not going to go forward. And I will tell you, I think that's probably the proper way.
Well, thank you so much for being with us, Governor Perry. Appreciate it. Always nice seeing you.
Yes, sir. Thank y'all. Bye-bye.
Can you believe they changed that name in the last administration for a little bit? But we'll forget all about that.
President Trump orders name changes to several military posts, including one that currently honors a Texas general. We look at how the administration is skirting the law to make the change happen. Fort Cavazos is set to become Fort Hood again. President Trump made the announcement in North Carolina while speaking to troops at Fort Bragg. The president said 7 Army posts would return to what he called their historic names.
For a little breaking news, we are also going to be restoring the names to Fort Pickett, Fort Hood, Fort Gordon, Fort Rucker, Fort Polk, Fort A.P. Hill, and Fort Robert E. Lee. We won a lot of battles out of those forts. It's no time to change.
The changes are coming to posts where names were changed in 2023 because they honored Confederate leaders. Now they're reverting back to their older names, but with different honorees. For example, Fort Hood used to be named after Confederate General John Bell Hood. Now it will be named after Colonel Robert Hood. He's a World War I hero who earned the Distinguished Service Cross for heroism. The name change honors Hood's service, but some believe it disrespects the general whose name is currently on the post. Richard Edward Cavazos was a native Texan who rose to become the Army's first Hispanic four-star general. His nephew says Cavazos earned the honor of having the post bear his name.
It was an affirmation of his career and the dedication he had to this country and the Army.
Ochoa said he and several of his relatives are not happy about the Cavazos name being wiped off the post.
You know, he was a great man, really a soldier. So, you know, I can't tell you enough about how he dedicated his life to the Army, and to be disrespected like this goes beyond anything I can think of.
Congress passed legislation in 2021 to ban naming bases after anyone who served in the Confederacy. The Trump administration is skirting that law by choosing honorees with the same last name as Confederates previously honored. Thank you again for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle. We'll be back next week to bring you an in-depth look at Texas politics.